This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, friends and neighbors, and welcome to yet another episode of Disobedient. I'm your host, Peter Arena, and today I am honored to be sitting down with Tricia Lindsay. Tricia is an attorney from the New York City area and a former educator of some 24 years. She recently attended and spoke at a rally in upstate New York, in Albany, New York, at our Capitol on February 4th of this year, a very frigid February 4th day, and where thousands of people were gathered protesting the perpetuation of mandates and passports related to the vaccine. Her fiery speech went online and went viral. I'm including a link to that recording in the show notes. It is a stirring and powerful indictment of government that has gone too far. It is a rallying cry to us as citizens of these United States to reassert our fundamental rights and responsibilities as citizens of a free confederacy of states. We're going to spend some time talking about the contents of that speech and some of the more salient points about what she spoke of that day. And then we're going to see where this conversation goes from there. Tricia Lindsay, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be speaking with you. I'm honored, truly. Love the title of the show, Disobedient. It fits my personality perfectly.
Yeah, I'm very honored to have you here. Your speech and the person that you are embody the spirit of this show, and I think your voice is incredibly urgently needed. So I start off my shows traditionally with this question, and that question is, who is Tricia Lindsay?
I just came out of the woodworks, right? What you see is what you get. I am real. I don't falter. I'm consistent. I am a former educator. I am a mother. Believe it or not, I'm a grandmother of two little girls.
I don't believe
it. Yes. I am your neighbor. I am a citizen like everyone else, but I am the citizen who questions everything since birth, probably, but definitely since the time of being a child. I've always questioned things. I've always looked, made observations, and asked the hard questions, even the questions that got me into trouble, even the questions that made people uncomfortable. And it has been with me since then, and it will remain. And I think they say we get worse as we get older, right? Because we can be who we are. But I'm a former educator of more than 20 years, 24 years. I started in education very early. I made observations then, and it's interesting how you will make declarations in life that come full circle years later, and you remember saying certain things. And I remember making declarations and saying I was going to be lobbying, just making statements for education, or going to deal with issues with regards to education and the disparities and what I saw going on in the schools. Yep. And this was maybe 20 years ago. I kept saying, I'm going to go to law school, but I forgot about it because I got wrapped up in my career. But as I was progressing through education and became, started wearing multiple hats, of that of an lead administrator, or, running programs, being a liaison to what we call central office, or the district office, you begin to see more and more things, and you begin to make observations, and you start to view education. I started to view education from a wider lens, just not in the classroom, but beyond the classroom. And started noticing politics and things that were going on, getting involved with the communities surrounding the schools. And I literally just started saying that something is wrong. As education was advancing, as medicine was advancing, as our country was discovering, making strides with inventions and, with knowledge, for me, the school situation was getting worse, progressively worse, and it just didn't make sense to me. How can a nation be thriving and improving and excelling, but our education system, what we're turning out, what's going on in the buildings was not? And so I began to question that. And I would always say to my coworkers that there's an experiment going on. And I just was speaking off the cuff. I said, there's an experiment going on, and these children are the data upon which the results are being viewed, or upon which, the conclusions are being drawn. And I said, there's something in the food, there's something in the prenatal vitamins, something in the water. I don't know, but something is wrong, because more and more kids are ending up sick. More and more kids are ending up with emotional disabilities, learning disabilities. It just doesn't make sense. Children were spending more time with social workers and psychologists and PT and all these things than in classrooms learning. And it became to a point where I used to tell them, no, you can't have them. I taught science. And I said, they cannot leave my class during my class. And as a matter of fact, when I became lead administrator, I said, not during any of their core area subjects to go to any of these services. So we have to work it out and figure out another way, because when they're with these practitioners, they're losing out on education. And so then what happens? And giving them a worksheet and a copy of notes or things like that, if that's making up for what's being presented in the classroom, then there's a serious problem.
Yeah.
And so I said, absolutely not. They cannot. And then I started to say that, to me, it appeared, and I'm not trying to reduce the importance of these practitioners in the building, right? Because they all play a role. But it just seemed like there was more of an emphasis on the services than on education, and not a balance. And it seemed as if children were being taught to use their challenges as a crutch and an excuse for why they could not, rather than an obstacle for why they could not, rather than as a challenge to overcome, to succeed despite what was happening. And so I said, we're handicapping children. We're handicapping them, and we're funneling them into a world that they're not prepared and ready for. And then it just seemed to me like it was on purpose, because then I started to look at the school to prison pipeline. And I said, at that time, I think it was maybe 97 to 98% of incarcerated persons were functionally illiterate. And I said, there's a strong correlation with the education system and the prison system. And that just led me down a rabbit hole. And I said, I can't fight the system that I'm in while it's feeding me, so I have to get out. And so I determined that I needed to go to law school, because I wanted the knowledge, I wanted the verbiage, I wanted the qualifications. Because even though I may have been aware and had knowledge and could speak to certain things, we all know in order to gain access to certain arenas, you just have to have certain qualifications for people to stop and listen sometimes, right?
Of course,
and
of course.
I know what I'm dealing with going into this world, and I'm immediately summed up as soon as the person sees me, right? So I need the access, I need the qualifications to gain the access, and I can deal with breaking through the barriers or breaking through, the ingrained prejudices and biases that people may have, when I first enter. I don't worry about all of that. I just need the access. Just get me in the room and I can handle it. And so I went to law school.
I bet you can.
I went to law school, and I've been on an accelerated path since, and that's the gist of my story. There's more to it, but that's.
Well, that gives me a lot of context that makes a lot of sense with regard to that speech that you gave in Albany. Your passion in protecting children basically came through resoundingly in that wonderful speech. And so I'm going to switch over to talking about some of those things, and in particular the big the big one in the room here is this subject of the doctrine of lesser magistrates, and we as citizens as lesser magistrates. I want you to help me and our listeners understand what that is, what its implications are, where does it come from. Go for
it. So if you look at the founding documents of this country, the Constitution of the United States, the Declaration of Independence, and then you even have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That all speaks to the people and rights, and the fact that just by virtue of us being human, we have indelible rights that are given to us by God Almighty. It's not given to us by the government. It's not given to us by anything else. It's God. And so the founding fathers of this country, though they were not perfect, they understood certain things. I mean, at the basis of it, people who founded this country, right, who came here, they were running from religious persecution. They were looking for freedom, right? And so they understood tyranny, and they knew that in establishing this country and the government, there was going to come a point where we were going to need some sort of recourse in order to check those that we would place in power, that they would place in power. And so every person in this country under the Declaration of Independence has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's 3 principles in that document, right? Initial. Every person has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. 2, the federal government's job is to protect the rights of the citizens to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So they're supposed to protect us. That's what their job is. And then 3, if they fail to do their job, then we as citizens have the right to abolish that government. So in essence, we have the right to revolt and to resist them. The doctrine of the lesser magistrates is the basis of that, right? Because the United States is a democratic republic, which means God first, and then the people. And then the government. We, in fact, give the government their authority. We've literally just chosen certain people that we say, okay, here, this is your job, because there are functions that have to be carried out in this country. And we need leaders in place in order to ensure that it's done. But all those functions are for the purpose of those 3 points that I just made, to protect the rights of the citizens who have the right to pursue for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what their job is. Everything that has been added over the years, right, are functions that the government has, the powers that be, saw fit to add that were necessary. But when you get to a point of adding provisions and laws and statutes that go against, first, the laws of God, you have now become tyrannical. You have now crossed the line that you're not supposed to. And if those laws go against the rights of the people, then you have now usurped your authority and you have to be removed. And we, the people, we have that charge, we have that obligation, we have that duty. Our local leaders are supposed to step between a tyrannical government, federal government, and its citizens, because the states are autonomous, right? There's certain points where the states, right, and the federal government sets the basic, the foundation, the minimum, and the states can offer greater protections. But when our local leaders fail to do their job, then they too have failed. And so now that authority goes back to the people. The 10th Amendment says that any authority that's not given to the federal government is reserved for the people. So,
well, so this subject, I'm sorry. So this subject of, you know, the effectively those rights and duties that are not specifically outlined in the Constitution, going back to the states or to the people. The past couple of years have awakened me to, hey, let's go blow the dust off of this thing called the Constitution and take a gander at it. And I think it's it's done the same thing for a lot of people. People are out there looking and say, let's go to the rule book here. And
Yes.
I think one of these things that now becomes part of the conversation is, well, one, have we gotten to the point where this thing is irredeemable? Has the federal government become too onerous and too overbearing in its overreach, that it is no longer possible for the respective states to claw back their sovereignty against this now, looming presence of a federal government and the financial strings with which it binds the states and the people. And then it seems as though also as a corollary to that a lot of these things that are being imposed upon the states and the people by the federal government are more or less soft pedaled as there. Well, it's not really a mandate. Someone looks at it in the courts, they say, well, you weren't really mandated. You were highly recommended to do it. You were basically coerced because your job depended upon it, your social life depended upon it, your status and your ability to move around and exercise your rights were predicated upon your having done it, but you didn't really have to do it. We weren't really mandating, unless of course you were in the Army, you're in the armed services, then you're USDA, Uncle Sam's side of beef. And so these are the kind of questions that, I'll hear coming along from other people talking about these subjects. So have at it. I kind of was a little broad there, but, are they mandates? Is it irredeemable?
So let me the mandates, for one, a mandate is not a law, right? It has the functionality of law, right? But it is contingent and based, it relies on our compliance.
Yeah.
The survival and strength of it relies on our compliance. And so that's why I have been screaming from the rooftops that compliance never works. It does not work. The more you give in, the stronger their power gets, and the more we have given over our authority and given our rights away. And once you give your rights away, it's difficult to get it back.
Yeah.
And that's why you see the erosion of so many laws now and so many rights that are coming on the backs of these mandates.
Yeah.
They start with the vaccine, and now it's Roe versus Wade, and then it's the children, right? Parental rights over their children, and it's Roe versus Wade. And no matter which side of the coin that you fall on that issue, the fact is, it still goes back to bodily integrity. It still goes back to the same exact issue that we're dealing with, right? What a person can and cannot do with their own body, the rights of a person to the care and control, custody and control of their children. And so we cannot be fooled by the smoke screens that are being thrown before us, because it's coming full. It's coming full on, and it's coming so fast. And it's a constant repetition on the big screen. And the problem with that big screen is that it hypnotizes people. You sit and you watch this stuff. You put people in homes, you put masks on them. You leave them to glare in people's eyes and try to figure out what's wrong. Then you push constant killings and murders and robberies and shootings in front of them. It builds the fear, it builds the anxiety. It creates more distance amongst people. And then you tell them about more vaccines. You tell them about monkeypox. You tell them about, it's just constant, a barrage of things to just paralyze people in action and in thought and in emotion. It is a psychosis, and it's like a mass hypnotism that's going on and that's happening. And so that's why I've been telling people, turn off the televisions from mainstream media, because that is their purpose right now. The mandates, anything that requires or asks you to choose between anything that attacks your life, that allows you life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if it goes against that and says you can't have these three things if you don't do X, Y, or Z, it goes against our founding documents. It goes against the Constitution, goes against the Declaration of Independence. It is a usurping of authority. It is tyrannical. You were mandated. If you're telling me that I can't eat, if I have money, how do I eat? How do I feed my family? Right. And so if you're saying, well, it's not really a mandate, you don't really have to do it. Okay, so you're telling me I'm choosing to be homeless, I'm choosing to die, I'm choosing not to be able to take care of my children because I'm refusing to take a vaccine. It's a play on words, and what it does is it's a bait and switch. They have set up society in a way that you're now, and it's coming. I would say by August, September, you're going to see full on when the
school year starts again, in other words.
When the school year starts and after the elections.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Leading up to that, you're walking around, and although the mandates are lifted, you have people that are still walking around in masks. You have people that are still running to get a vaccine, to get, quote unquote, what they call a vaccine.
Right.
And it's getting to a point where they're now saying, well, if you didn't want to take the vaccine and you lost your job, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can't go to XYZ because you didn't want to take the vaccine. That's your business. Oh, well, they got sick and died. I'm sorry, but they were stupid. They should have taken the vaccine. This is the mindset of society. We have become so degraded. We have condescended to a level that we don't even see people as human beings anymore. We don't even recognize humanity in our neighbors, right? And then they're throwing the race card in there to further divide people.
Big time.
You know, and I'm not saying that race is not an issue in our country, but there's a human issue that's bigger than the race issue.
Uh-huh.
There's a humanity issue, because when you are attacking children and when you're going for kids, there's no greater atrocity in my mind to go for the children and the youngest and the oldest of our society.
Yeah.
And so the mandates are illegal. They go against the very laws of God. They are usurping of authority. They are tyrannical. And they are illegal because they directly go to the core of our rights, our most basic rights, which is to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which includes the fundamental rights of a person to work, travel, and basically just live, and to take care of their children.
So I can see for people like myself who are not, educated in the Constitution and are not lawyers and don't understand the arguments that are presented by the courts. This idea that, we use the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, or I should say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as the litmus test for which something is considered to be lawful or just. But then we also talk about in the 10th Amendment how those things that have not been enumerated in the Constitution are then reserved for the states or the people within the state. Well, then we have a state like our own here in New York, where they contemplate and then pursue bills and laws that codify these sorts of unconstitutional pursuits, such as this Assembly Bill A416, which was, I think I wrote it down here, so relates to the removal of cases, contacts, and carriers of communicable diseases that are potentially dangerous to the public health. And so effectively, people interpret that as hustling people into quarantine camps and or less how do I put it? Less favorably, concentration camps. That's what people get into their minds. And
I mean, they had children locked up in cages, right? And I believe they're still down there. It's just that there's something different. They don't want
Yeah,
to
right.
show
Now,
that
yeah,
anymore.
it's not politically expedient to stand there and cry at the fence any longer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't understand why people have a hard time believing. They
Yeah.
had other people locked up in warehouses, separated from their children, some in cages, some laying on each other. We heard about the atrocities that happened down there. So if they can do that with these people, why would they think that they can't do it with us? They locked us in our homes. They locked us in our homes, told us we could not go anywhere. We had to stay inside. Locking, if you're trying to cure or stop a disease, you lock healthy people in their homes. And then if someone in that home gets sick, you lock them in the home with the sick person. So no air, no oxygen, no exchange. So you're just exchanging dirty air in the house, right?
Yeah.
And so that's supposed to make things better? No, I don't think so.
Right.
And again, all these laws and all these bills that go against our rights are contingent upon our compliance and us being asleep and not understanding what's going on. When I speak to people and tell them about the laws that are being created and the regulation that was pushed by our wonderful governor,
Quote unquote,
which was even an extreme version of A416, because that bill was even worse than what A416 proposed. It's like it goes over their heads. It's like, I don't know if they don't know how to process it, or they just don't know what to do with it, or if they're just not even hearing me. And some people just don't believe it, right? Because it's not out there. Some people just don't believe what's going on and what's happening. And so again, it's all contingent upon that. We have to stop being a reactive society and we have to be a responsive society, because the reaction comes after everything has gone bad. And reactions usually don't get you anywhere. It's usually yelling and screaming, and that's about it. Your emotions and that's it, right? The unfortunate incident that took place in Texas the other day, everything that you see on the television afterwards is the reaction to the tragedy and the loss that has already occurred. We have to stop that. It is a dangerous place for us to be in. We have lost, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people over the past 2 years.
at least.
At least. And it wasn't because of what they would want us to believe, and so we have to stop being reactive and we have to start being responsive. We have to look at what's happening, because this is going on in phases. And I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole you want me to go, but
I'm going to kick you into the rabbit hole right now. Go for it. You can go wherever you want with this show. It's your call.
I was looking at a post regarding Trudeau, Canada, and what he's proposing with the ban on the sale of handguns. And I said,
and the confiscation of them.
And I said, my brain, this is just how I think. I said, I thought assault weapons were the problem.
Yeah.
And I thought they were the problem. How did we jump over assault weapons and get to handguns? And I thought the fact that we're handing out licenses to mentally unstable people is the problem.
Yeah, right.
So we jump over all of this and now we get to handguns. I said, are we not seeing the handwriting on the wall, people? Are we not seeing what's going on? They are disarming us. Because if we are disarmed, there's no protection. And they can do anything they want to do, because guess what? When they come to your door to take you and separate you from your children and funnel your children into this system of trafficking and whatever they're doing with them, you have no protection. But they're coming with theirs, because they will be armed when they come to your door. They will be armed. And we have to wake the hell up. We have to wake up. Oh my God, and their brain, I don't know if you have children, grandchildren, but the video games that they have been putting out for years, that when I look at them and as I pass in stores and things of that, because my daughter never played any of those kind of big video games, and my son is older, but I don't recall him playing those kind of games, and I don't think he does now. I'm not sure. I don't think so. They're not video games kind of people, but when I see them in the stores, and you can't tell the difference between real life and a video game, and then the game is requiring children to rape a woman in the street to get to another level. You're holding people up with guns, and when they fire the gun, blood splatters on the screen.
Yeah.
There was another game that children were playing where to get to another level, they had to sodomize a soldier. Literally.
Wow.
Sodomize a man. And I said, what in the hell is this? This game is being played by children, and parents are just putting their kids in front of these games and buying them and not looking what's going on. This is to get to the next level and next level. And this is for years. Wow. And then last night I'm looking at a post on YouTube, on Instagram, of this young little boy, 10 years old, being asked what does he want to be when he grows up. And guess what his answer was?
I can't imagine.
A murderer.
Oh my Lord.
He said, I want to be a murderer.
Oh my
and
Lord.
This young boy articulated very clearly his reasons for wanting to be a murderer. He was able to, I will send it to you when we're done.
Yeah.
He was able to articulate the reasons why and how he got to this point. And that he just wants to do it, and he just wants to kill everybody in the whole world in the state except for his family, and maybe not his teachers. And that was only asked. He only said that after the girl that was asking him a question said, "Does that include me?" And he looked at her, and he caught it, and he said, "Well, no, not you, and maybe not my teachers and my friends either." But you can see he just threw that in there.
Yeah, right.
Because lies now.
Yeah, maybe I've crossed a little bit of a line here. I think you crossed the line when you said you wanted to be a murderer.
Exactly. But I said, what has happened in our society? But this is what happens when you place nefarious people with nefarious agendas in positions in government. They are in charge of our very lives.
Well, so a question that's kind of formulating in my mind here is that we've got this kind of faceless, technocratic, corporate controlled governing state right here, over here. The other side is that we have our local governments, our communities, and the two seem to be basically at war with one another. And there are those people who within our communities who are unwittingly or are so what's the word? They're so willingly going along with the enticements and the allure of those things that, or the sorts of things that are ultimately like rewards that are being offered to these members of our community as, well, do this, do that, and the other thing. In other words, the social credit scoring type of inducements that effectively allow this technocratic state, this corporate technocratic state, to effectively take control of those people. But then we have a core of people like you who are saying, we have these rights and we're asserting our rights. How do we keep them? How do we create a firewall? What do we do effectively to assert our rights and keep the barbarians on the other side of the gate, as it were?
We have to hold the line. We have to unplug from their systems. We pretty much have to do what I said in that speech, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to sacrifice. There's a book called Sapiens.
Oh, you mean Noble Harari's?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Yuval Noah Harari's book *Sapiens*. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I don't know much about it.
I haven't read the whole thing, but just I'm reading it now in between.
Yeah, right, right.
But I know this man spoke at the World Economic Forum. You can see him in videos with Klaus
Schwab
and Schwab and various leaders in our country. Our government consulted with him through the pandemic.
Yeah.
And this man says, God is dead, religion is dead, and we're just waiting for the body to decay.
And you have no soul.
And you have no soul. He says we are, does he use the word useless eaters? I know.
No, his term is hackable animals.
Yes, yes. If you think about what he's saying, he says he's waiting for God's body to decay. God doesn't have a physical body. What is his physical body?
Us.
The church.
The church. The body of the church is us.
What did they close during the pandemic?
Yeah.
The churches.
The churches.
All went home, closed the doors, and took money from government to do so. And the only time they opened their doors were to give out vaccines. There's something very wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right? Something very wrong with that. So he knows that people are willing to trade themselves for profits, for money. You know, we went home and we were promised stimulus checks, $1,400. And people got excited about that. Got excited while taking in poison into their bodies. That $1,400 is not going to be able to do anything for them. He also says that people, we're just consumers, and we don't need any more people. That the population needs to be reduced. That we're just wasteful consumers or something like to that effect. He says that this is the new God, and technocrats are the apostles. And people are so stupid that anything you put across this device and that television, they believe. So you don't have to hide it anymore.
Right.
You just put it out there in front of their faces. They're never going to question, never going to say anything. And you just sit back and wait and watch what happens. Robots are going to take over. AI is what's needed. I mean, it's just bizarre that this person spoke at the World Economic Forum. Our government is consulting with them and our world leaders. And then we wonder why we're ending up with children that have these thoughts, with atrocities that's going on in Texas and Newtown and around the country and the world. Why people are hypnotized, because that's exactly what this thing is meant to do. And why the state of our world and our country is going. People are and education took out analytical thought. It was removed years ago. Literacy was not important anymore. Most of the people graduating school cannot even read properly. They have no high level thinking skills. Their vocabulary is very basic and very minimum. And so most people are not equipped to file court documents, to fill out forms, to confront government with regards to the violation of their rights. They're fearful because their very existence and survival depends upon one of the systems that they have been funneled into by the school system, which stopped teaching them years ago.
Uh-huh.
So this has been in the works for years. And so when you don't have analytical thought, you just believe anything that's said to you. And anything that goes outside of that box, that steps outside of the box and says, think about it. That doesn't make sense. They can't think about it because their brains were not trained to think. They were trained to regurgitate information, and only information necessary to a certain point and certain extent, right? Read this paragraph and they ask a very basic question, you rewrite what was in that paragraph here. There's no thought. It's just go identify the statement and regurgitate it here. So what's going on? People are watching television, watching posts, watching mainstream media, and regurgitating the information to you. So when you go and ask them to think outside the box, open your mind, open your brain, break it down, they cannot do it because their minds have not been trained to do that. So when you and I come along and we're trying to break that up, we become the tyrants. We become not the tyrants, we become oh my gosh, what do they label us as? Terrorists. We become the domestic terrorists.
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly what I was thinking, is that, we have parents coming to school board meetings and effectively doing what they're constitutionally encouraged to do, and then being labeled as terrorists because they're questioning, standing up peacefully, speaking out against things, being met with stony faces on the parts of these school board administrators who you go to these school board meetings and they just stare back at you like you're not even saying anything. There's not even a reaction. It's as if, but then the moment you actually begin to have some sort of effective impact on the things that they're unlawfully trying to impose upon the children, now you're a terrorist. You're a terrorist now. And I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to any of our previous episodes. We recently had Nancy Orticelli from the Constitutional Coalition of New York State on, and she's just a firebrand. She and her group of folks are out there basically standing up for our constitutional rights on this local level. And, one of the big things is, and I wanted to ask you to kind of help address some of this, we touched upon it, is the financial strings that are attached, that are the inducements for individuals, local governments, whether it be city or county, and then of course the state. So as you go higher up this hierarchy of federal state authority, the money is being showered down, but with it, of course, come all of these strings. So
Yes,
how do we get the needle out of the arm of all of these local governments?
Well, let me say this, and I don't think I responded to your question before, which is probably in line with what you're asking me now. We, the people, have to stand up. We have a voice and we have a vote. And I know most people have lost faith in our system, our voting system. But the fact is, someone's going to be in office. And I am a firm believer that it's time for a third party. One side is too quiet, it's tyrannical, and they're pushing this agenda full force. Most people don't realize it, and they have faith in that side and don't think that that's what's going on. And while the other side, some people on the other side are not with the agenda, they're too quiet for me. That's my problem. They're too quiet. There are very few people saying anything. And so to me, you're more concerned with maintaining your status quo and your membership within certain clubs and communities and in certain circles. And so you too are the problem, because you're still willing to trade our freedoms for camaraderie, for the benefits you're getting, for the paychecks that you're getting, the bonuses that are being sent to you. And there are very few of you that are willing to stand up and speak out and to risk that all to defend the Constitution and defend the rights of the people. And so I think it's time for people to put pressure on that party, on the party that they are, on that particular party. And I'm not identifying one over the other because I don't want to endorse any party. I just want people to think. I just want people to think. You break it down. You figure out who's the tyrannical ones and who's the quiet ones, right? And so silence is complicity, right? If you're silent about something, you're complicit, right? It's acquiescence, because you're not helping. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And so if you're not going to lead with we the people, then I don't need you either. And if you're not leading with we the people, then you're not for the people. You're for yourself. and your own selfish agenda. And so the people have to stand up and demand. And I keep saying there has to be a We the People party. And I'm not talking about people who have now jumped on the bandwagon since I've been saying, and I can tell, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but ever since we're talking about we the people, we the people, we the people, all of a sudden you have candidates that are running around talking about we the people. Well, watch their background. Look at their background and see if their background and their life's work has been about we the people. Because if it hasn't been, it hasn't switched over to that all of a sudden. They're just using the buzzword and they're just throwing it out because they know that that's the popular word now. For me, it's not a popular word. For me, it's a very ancient phrase that has been around since the beginning that clearly everyone has forgotten, including the leaders that are in government that should have led with that from the beginning. So if the person is not truly representing we the people and their life's work has not represented and has not demonstrated that, then don't fall for the usual, where they come in and it's election time and all these promises are made and buzzwords are used and they say the perfect phrases, right? And then everyone runs to the polls and votes and then they get in and do nothing, right? I hear certain candidates saying, well, I believe that we should, and I believe that, okay, that's wonderful. I believe a lot of things too, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And what have you demonstrated? What have you started to, what are you doing now before you get into that office? What's happening now? How are you doing anything to effectuate this change, right? Because you're not in office, I'm not in office, but we're doing something about it. What are you doing? You're saying you want this seat in this position in order to effectuate what? 1, 2, 3. Tell me 3 things that you're going to do immediately, that you're going to do, not that you believe should be done, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, or what you want done, and lead with that. And people need to open their eyes and ears and vote them out. And the vote has to be so strong and so loud. Our voices have to be so loud that there is no mistaking what was done and should have been done. That even if they steal the vote, even if they just snatch it away, that is obvious that something happened. And then we still have to keep going. We still have to fight. We still have to make demands. We have to show up at the legislative offices. We have to get on our community, our city councils. We have to get on our community boards. We have to deal with the boards of education. If they're not respecting your rights as a parent, take your children out to schools. It's like I said, it's all gone to hell anyway.
There's a flood of people leaving the school systems, and
when 30% is gone, they lose the federal dollars. That's when they'll start to listen. Because in this country, they only respect money. That's all that's respected is money. So once they lose a certain amount of enrollment, they lose the money. So then they'll have to start thinking. They will have to start thinking. And parents need to sue the schools for lack of services. Because when teachers are terminated, when employees are not terminated and the schools are understaffed, your children are being pushed into cafeterias together, 80 to hundreds of kids at a time being monitored by 10 or so staff members. That goes directly, is contradictory to what they claim they're trying to avoid, right? You need space, you need air, but because there's a lack of staffing, this is what's going on and was going on in a number of schools before. And I'm sure that problem is not solved because they did not rehire the teachers. Same thing in the hospitals. Patients need to sue for, and not just patients that went in with COVID. I'm talking about patients that were in there that received reduced services or ended up not getting the services or the treatment that they needed to because of the lack of staffing. When we start to do that, it comes from a different angle. We can't all come from the same angles. There's multiple angles. There's many ways to skin a cat. And we need to start thinking like that. And we need to start putting our money where our mouths are, right? Go to the courts, sue. Children did not receive services, special needs kids. Regular kids were placed in the classrooms. They were not getting a free and appropriate education because when you're putting me in a cafeteria for hours a day with 80 to 90, 100 kids, and no one's teaching me, that's not an appropriate education. So they failed.
Well, on a similar note, there has been this movement on the part of a lot of parents and concerned citizens to utilize the vulnerability that these surety bonds that each of these administrators and public officials are supposed to have in the event that they are sued. But many of them don't have the surety bonds, but Likewise, even if they did have the surety bonds that are required of them, that there's only so much money that the bonds will cover, and so they effectively are suing them. And I don't understand the mechanics of it entirely, but people are effectively suing these school administrators and board members and local officials, utilizing this vulnerability. Can you speak to that?
They need to.
Yeah.
I can speak a little bit to it because I became aware of it. But what I did say is I love it because it's going from all angles. You know what I mean? It's going from all angles, and parents are thinking, and they are demanding. They are demanding based upon their rights. They're demanding from the school boards that which they're supposed to be delivering.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I read an article, not to digress, but I read an article, and I didn't dig into it to do any investigation, but I do realize that there were a number of situations across the country that were happening at the same time. And it has to do with the sex education that are now in schools, and that they're wanting to now take to the second grade and third grade level, right? And sex education, for parents that are watching, it's not the sex education class that it was years ago. It's not about hormones and puberty and the stages of pregnancy. That's not what it is. It's a grooming that's taking place in these with these classes that are being offered.
Yeah.
And I read an article about a mother who, I guess through her child, discovered that there was inappropriate content being taught in a sex education class. I mean, very inappropriate content.
Yeah.
Where they were pretty much teaching children sexual activity in a particular school in California. But what struck me about the article, that was bad enough. But the article said that she had been in a fight with the school board about the class. And there were a number of parents that became aware of it. And there was this ongoing fight and dispute with the school board. And I said, why is the school board fighting parents about something like this? It clearly is, if what they're reporting in this article is true and what they said was being taught in this curriculum is true, it's highly inappropriate. And this is like a grooming process. You're actually teaching children sexual activity, And if a group of parents show up at your school board meeting and they are in opposition to a curriculum that's being taught to their children, why is the school board fighting them? There should not be a fight. The school board should be on board with the parents. These are their children.
I contend that there's, in all likelihood, financial strings attached, that the inducements to these school administrators and the larger school system cannot let go. See, this is that subject. This is my point. We've got this issue with the needle is in the arm. They can't take the needle out.
Because this has been going on for years. First, it was with the standardized testing, Peter. So standardized testing, I'm not sure if you're aware, standardized testing every year. So standardized testing in New York began in 5th grade, right? The state exams, the math and the ELA exams, 5th grade when they first were implemented. They took them and decided to use them on a 3rd grade level because they realized that 3rd grade was a greater indicator as to which children they could funnel to the prison system versus into, I guess, functional society. And it's a tracking system. And most parents didn't realize that. It was literally a tracking system, right? And 3rd grade is where you'll see the greatest number of children. That's where children transitioned into special ed, especially children of color. And from there, it starts to decline for them. And for every year they choose, it's sort of like they choose the school district that's going to fail for that particular year, because there are pilot questions on every exam, and questions that supposedly don't count towards the score for that year, but it's placed on the test to see how many kids do well and in what areas. The school district that does the worst with those pilot questions, if it's the school district that they want to choose, they put those questions on next year's test because they know that that particular area will fail, will not do well. then when they fall beneath the standard, right, now it brings in all these federal dollars. These federal dollars come into the school district. We have all these after school programs. The principal, the superintendent gets extra money. All the consultants, get extra money. So now we get to rehire those that are retired and already collecting this enormous pension. Now they get to come in on contract. Some words upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars many times, and new textbooks. So companies, the money's just spread wide and far, and then it trickles down to the building level, and the teachers get extra money for, working after school programs and things of that nature. And so it's that inoculation of money, that money situation in this country. And so every year, so it doesn't make sense. So in every school district, you only want to take a certain number of kids from level 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. The threes, they don't really want to focus on, because there's no real money with the jump from the 3s to the 4s, because those kids are doing okay. The greatest money that you get is to take the kids from 1 to 2, but you don't want to take too many of them each year, because the money is designated over, I think it's 3 or 4 years, and you want the money to last, because if you take all the kids from 1 to 3, the money goes away. So it behooves them to keep the kids illiterate, both with math skills and in reading skills, because that's where the money comes in. And so that's what it is. So all of this has to do with greed and control, and it all is connected. Every bit of it is connected, and it's been something that's been in process for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate that most of society was asleep. But the good thing is that many people are waking up. Many have awakened, and now they're just trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah,
and
I think you're right. Yeah, by the millions and millions of people are looking into subjects that used to be considered fringe, and oh my God, you're out of your mind, and and so terms that people would not dare to say in public are being spoken quite frequently and quite seriously, and people are now they're watching a lot closer. And now, like you say, people need to take action. Before we we have to close up here real soon, but I wanted to mention that down your way on Long Island, there is a group that is now basically a statewide group, but I believe it's called the People's Coalition. And if you just type in People's Coalition, I think you'd probably get to it. I'll put the actual link to their site in the show notes. But they, I believe, are doing some pretty good stuff in terms of this. Let's re-embrace the Constitution. Let's advocate for those constitutional rights. And like you were saying, let's find those candidates who aren't just talking the talk, but are actually walking the walk, and let's get behind them so they become a kind of a lobbying advocacy group for constitutionally minded politicians all over the state. So I'll leave that in the show notes. Before we get a chance to close up, I wanted to ask you any closing sentiments on your part, and then also how people can get a hold of you if they want to, and see what you may be writing online or what you're doing. You may be.
Well, I'm on Instagram. I believe it's TSLind33, TSLIND, as in David 33. That's on Instagram and Facebook, and I think I have a Twitter. I think if you just search it, I have someone who does. I'm not good with social media. Okay. So I have my assistant keeps up with that for me. Okay.
You'll just give me I'll get those from you at some point here, and then I'll put those in the show notes.
Sure, that's great. Thank you. What I will say is that there are people that are like-minded. My family has grown, and it's grown not based upon blood, but based upon the blood of humanity. So we're connected by humanity, but not necessarily biologically and with DNA. Amen. We may have different mothers fathers, but because we are, first of all, created by God, we are brothers and sisters. Two, we are of like mind, and we are fighting to accomplish, or working towards a common goal. And with that, my family has expanded, and I appreciate that. And whereby this country and this nefarious agenda would like to keep us apart, separated by our differences, which is literally less than 0.1%, right? Because if you look at every human being, we are less than 0.1% different from one to the next. It's so insignificant, but they use these things to keep us apart, because when they keep us apart, we don't speak, we don't get to know each other, and we in essence fear each other based upon the dialogue and what they would want to put before us. Don't stop tolerating people, celebrate people. That I didn't even get into that, but that doctrine that they have been pushing, that doctrine of tolerance. Oh, we're a tolerant nation. We're tolerant. We recognize and we respect. No, I don't want anyone tolerating me, and I don't want to tolerate anyone. I want to celebrate you and your differences, and that changes the whole scope of being. This changes the way I approach you and the way you approach me. I love your differences. I love your true diversity, and I want you to love mine. You may not like it all, but you respect it and you want to know about it, and we celebrate it, because in our differences, that's where our strength comes from. Because then we become secret weapons. They don't know what we look like. They don't know which angle we're coming from, and we don't look any one way, so they don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
Run for office. Get on the school boards. Take your kids out in open neighborhood schools. Start your own community. Start your own companies. We need to unplug from their system. And by unplugging, we level it, because the funds dry up. And that's how we do it. We have power. We just don't know it, and we just don't necessarily know what to do with it. But everyone has a talent. Everyone has some kind of a skill. Use it. On the grassroots level, everyone doesn't need to be on a stage and in a courtroom and in the legislative offices. Everyone doesn't need to do that. Just opening a school, open your home and take children in. Teach them. If you have the knowledge, teach them. Teach them. Go back to the one-room schoolhouse. It works. Trust me, it's still being used in many of these countries that they say are third world, but their kids can beat us, slap us around in science and math in this country. So let's just do it, and harness the power within. We the people, we are magistrates. Use it.
We are magistrates. I love that. I love that refrain at the end of your speech, and I think that's a perfect place to close our conversation. We are magistrates. I'm going to remind our listeners to check out that wonderful speech given by Tricia at that Albany rally in February. Like I say, have the link to it in the show notes. So please go check that out. And I want to extend to you a deep thanks, Tricia, for taking the time out of your day and spending the time to sit and chat with us and talk about these incredibly important issues. So we'll catch up again, I hope.
Definitely. Thank you again for having me. It was great. It was great.
We'll talk again soon.
Very important.
Appreciate you. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye now.